A few weeks ago, I was in Antarctica. I'm a research scientist, and I thought it would be a good chance to study climate change. I was excited at first. The research station looked like a small cluster of metal boxes surrounded by endless snow. It was peaceful, but it wasn't long before that changed. The first night I woke up, there was a thumping sound. It echoed through the metal walls. I thought it was the wind. It was deep into the night. I pulled the blankets tighter. The cold seeped in, and I felt uneasy. I remembered what other crews had said about strange things happening, but I brushed it off. I told myself it was just the isolation messing with my head. As the days passed, the thumping turned into whispers. I couldn't make out the words at first, but they were there, growing louder. I focused on my work, but the whispers were hard to ignore. Shadows moved just outside my line of sight. I felt my heart race. I wasn't sure if I could trust what I saw anymore. Equipment failures happened often. My laptop crashed. The power flickered more than once. I saw odd messages scratched into the walls. They mentioned past teams, and it felt wrong. I looked at my colleagues. They seemed distant and spooked. I could tell they felt it too. One evening I stepped outside for some fresh air. The wind howled, biting at my face. Something caught my eye. A shadow darted from one building to another. I squinted but couldn't see anyone. A chill ran down my spine. I hurried back inside and locked the door. My hands shook as I tried to calm down. I thought about calling someone, but what would I say? As I took a deep breath, the whispers grew stronger. They sounded desperate. "Mark!" My heart raced. I glanced over my shoulder. The room felt empty, but something was there. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I told myself to be brave, but terror gripped me. I had to uncover what was happening, but what if I found something I wasn't ready for? My mind raced. What could be hiding in this desolate place? The next night, the whispers turned urgent. "Mark!" I could hear my name clearly. It echoed through the station. The light flickered above me. I was frozen in place. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew it was more. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously moved toward the source of the sound. The darkness seemed to close in. The shadows flickered just out of reach. I stepped into the hallway, and the air felt thick. I felt like I was being watched. Then everything went dead quiet. I froze. It was too quiet. The whispers stopped. I stood there, breathing hard. My mind raced with thoughts I couldn't write down. What was going on? A chill ran through me, and I knew that something was wrong. Something was about to happen. I held my breath. The silence pressed down hard. I stepped further into the hallway, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. It felt like the shadows themselves were watching me. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, booming like a drum in the stillness. I scanned the area. Everything looked normal. The metal walls reflected my light, casting strange shapes all around. There were no signs of life, no whispers, just the remnants of fear hanging heavy in the air. I took another step. The sound of my boots echoed. I had to find out what was causing this panic. I remembered the words scratched into the walls. I had seen them earlier in the week, but I hadn't thought much of it then. I turned back toward my room, intent on checking the notes I'd taken. As I moved, a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was quick, but it was definitely there. I stopped again, straining to see beyond the beam of my flashlight. The corner of the hallway enveloped darkness, and my instinct screamed at me to flee. I pushed back the urge to turn and run. I had to know what was happening. I finally reached my room. The door creaked open, and I rushed inside, shutting it firmly behind me. I fumbled through my notes piled on the table. The walls reflected more of my fear with the way they loomed around me. I flipped through each page, searching for any clues. Suddenly a loud bang reverberated from the hallway, rattling the metal walls. It shook me to my core. I jerked upright, my heart racing again. I felt the adrenaline surge. Something was out there, and it was angry. I grabbed my flashlight, ready to use it like a weapon if necessary. I paused. Remembering the whispers and the way they had called my name, I wondered, what if there was something, someone, trying to reach me? I turned back toward the door, pushing aside the fear clawing at my mind. As I opened the door, I stepped cautiously into the hallway again. The air felt different. A bitter chill raced down my spine. The overhead lights flickered once more, casting a dim glow. I felt the shadows pressing in around me. Then I saw it. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, partially obscured by the darkness. It seemed to pulse with shadows, shifting as if it were made of nothing but blackness. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the light. But it was still there, unmoving, watching me. "Mark!" It spoke my name in a tone I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. The whispers had taken shape. I stepped back, instinctively wanting to run again, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I could barely breathe. What was this thing? I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Just then, the lights flickered out entirely. Darkness engulfed me. The darkness pressed in on all sides. I could feel my heartbeat thudding in the silence, loud enough to drown out any sound. Panic surged through me. I fumbled with my flashlight, desperately trying to turn it back on. The beam flickered, then blinked once, illuminating the figure for a brief moment. It was still there, but now it seemed closer. My breath quickened. I stumbled backward, fumbling blindly for the door. I slammed it shut and leaned against it, trying to quiet my racing heart. The metal felt cold against my back. I needed to think, but fear had my mind in a vice. The whispering began again, louder and more insistent. "Mark, come closer." It wrapped around me like a vine, pulling at my thoughts, urging me to move toward that terrifying presence. I shook my head, desperation mounting. What did it want? My fingers brushed against the notes on my table. Maybe there was something in them, something that could explain this. I turned on the flashlight again, but the flicker was weak. I needed to be quick. I grabbed a few papers and laid them out in front of me. The scratches from the walls were still fresh in my mind. There were symbols I didn't understand. I flipped through my notes, but nothing felt like it would help. The whispers grew louder. "Mark!" Then I noticed something strange in the corner of the paper, the date. I had been here for weeks, but the days blurred together. I quickly scrolled back through my notes until I found a phrase that made me freeze. "They were here before me." I had written that down after exploring the main research complex. It had stuck with me, but in this moment it felt more significant. I glanced toward the door, half expecting to see the figure pushing against it. I forced myself to look back at the notes. Had others encountered this thing? Had it been here for years, watching over these corridors? Suddenly, another loud bang echoed through the hallway, rattling the metal walls. I jumped, instinctively looking toward the door again. It felt as if the shadows were creeping back in, waiting to engulf me once more. Out of sheer instinct, I pulled out my phone. I opened a flashlight app, hoping the light would push back the dark. It was a weak beam, but it was something. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice more defiant than I felt. The whispers stopped. For a brief moment, silence enveloped me again. My heart raced in the stillness. Then, just like that, the air shifted. I felt a presence behind me, just outside the edge of my light. I turned, and that was when I saw it. A small, glimmering object slowly emerging from the shadows. It was a pendant, reflecting the light of my flashlight. It swayed gently, as if inviting me closer. The name engraved on it sent a chill through me. Evelyn. I didn't recognize the name, but something about it felt familiar. The moment I reached out for it, I heard the whispers return, louder than before, filling the space with urgency. "Mark, you must understand. Come back to us." My heart raced. I needed to know what had happened here. But as the darkness closed in around me once more, I realized I was standing at the precipice of something far bigger and more terrifying than I had ever imagined. That's when the lights flickered back on, revealing the unmistakable outline of the figure in the hallway once more. It stepped forward, and I took a breath, ready to confront the unknown. The figure's outline sharpened as the lights stabilized. It was taller than I had expected, its dark shape looming in the light. The eyes, two reflective orbs, seemed to pierce through to my very core. I gripped my phone tightly, the weak beam flickering as if sensing my uncertainty. "Evelyn," I whispered, the name escaping my lips like a forgotten melody. A part of me yearned to understand the connection. The figure stepped closer, and I felt a surge of cold air seeping through the cracks around the door behind me. My instincts screamed at me to flee, yet I found myself rooted to the spot. "Mark!" It spoke again, the voice a low echo that vibrated through the empty space. It was neither threatening nor inviting, just a tone of urgency. I felt compelled to answer, despite every logical reasoning in my mind telling me to turn and run. "What do you want?" My voice cracked, but I forced myself to sound stronger. The figure didn't reply, but it gestured toward the pendant still shimmering on the floor. Curiosity battled with dread within me. I wanted to look away, to run into the nearest exit, but the pendant, the name, it all tugged at threads of my memory I didn't know I had. I took a cautious step forward, testing the limits of my fear. As I bent down, the whispers returned, swirling around me like a storm. "You have to find her. Help us." The urgency grew, echoing in my mind. I picked up the pendant, feeling its weight in my palm. The surface was unnaturally cold, sending a shiver through my body. "Who are you?" I asked again, my voice steadier this time. The figure hesitated before extending a hand, beckoning me closer. I felt a magnetic pull, an inexplicable connection to whatever it was. But before I could move, a loud crash came from the adjacent room, jolting me back to reality. The figure turned slightly, its attention breaking from me for just a moment, but that was all I needed. Panic settled back in. My heart raced as I felt the pull of survival instinct surge. The room was filled with shadows now, coiling around the edges of my vision. I shot a glance over my shoulder toward the noise. The door creaked open, an invitation filled with uncertainty. My decision was made. I needed to stay one step ahead of whatever was coming. "It's not safe here," I said, backing away from the figure. The whispers quieted, falling to a mere hum, but they remained there, a reminder of what I was leaving behind. I bolted toward the door, grabbing my backpack in a haste. Light flickered again, revealing the figure standing still, seemingly watching me with an unreadable expression. I didn't dare look back as I pushed through the door, racing into the hallway. But then I immediately regretted it. The air felt thicker, charged with an energy I couldn't identify. I was far from alone. I could hear low murmurs now, drifting through the corridor like smoke. My skin prickled as I realized I wasn't just fleeing from the figure anymore. "Mark!" The voice echoed once more, echoing off the walls. "Help us!" I sped down the hallway, and with every step, the darkness enveloped me tighter. I had to find out what was really going on here, and I was pretty sure it wasn't going to let me leave without a fight. I sprinted down the hallway, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. Shadows flickered against the walls, twisting and distorting as if they had a life of their own. "Mark!" The voice was getting closer, prompting me to run faster. I rounded a corner and skidded to a halt before a large wooden door. It was different from the others, ornate and weathered, almost as if it had stories etched into its surface. I pressed my ear against the cool wood, desperately hoping for a clue about what waited for me beyond. Whispers swirled, growing softer but still insistent. "Help us." It was as if the walls themselves urged me to listen. I felt foolish and terrified, but something about the scene drew me in. What could it possibly reveal? I hesitated before reaching for the handle. Just then, a loud bang echoed behind me, sending chills down my spine. The figure, the one in the other room, was coming. I didn't have time. I threw open the door and stumbled into the next room. It was dark inside, save for a few flickering bulbs, struggling to hold their ground against the encroaching shadows. The air felt heavy, saturated with secrets begging to be uncovered. I stepped cautiously, my feet echoing off the concrete floor. "Mark!" The voice came louder now, echoing through the dimness. I felt its urgency soak into my bones. Where was it coming from? Then I spotted a faint light in the corner. As I made my way closer, I realized it was a screen, old and cracked. Ghostly images flickered across it, but the content was jumbled and unrecognizable. I squinted, trying to find meaning in the chaos. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. The air shifted, almost like the world had condensed into a singularity. I spun around, expecting to see the figure, but instead found only the empty room staring back at me. My breath quickened. I returned my gaze to the screen, and that's when I saw it, a smudge of clarity in the chaos. A woman's face formed amidst the confusion, one I recognized, though I didn't know how. Long dark hair framed her features, and her expression was a mix of determination and fear. Evelyn. "Help us!" she pleaded through cracked lips, but her voice wasn't just a sound. It reverberated inside my skull, as if she were calling out from another time. "What is happening?" I whispered, not expecting an answer. Suddenly the lights above flickered violently, the screen flashing with more images, fragments of dark figures, tremors, chaos. My stomach twisted as I realized they weren't just images, they were memories, perhaps even mine. Before I could process what I was witnessing, I heard a soft shuffle behind me. I turned and found the figure standing in the doorway, a silhouette against the brighter hallway. Fear gripped me again. Was it friend or foe? "Mark," it said again, its posture rigid. "You need to—" "No!" I shouted, feeling a surge of panic. "What do you want from me?" The figure hesitated, and just like that the energy in the room shifted. The air felt thicker, and the whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. A looming darkness crept closer, encircling me like a noose. Then everything went dark. I stood frozen, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I could hear nothing but silence pressing against me. In that silence, an unfamiliar voice broke through, calling my name, promising answers I wasn't sure I wanted. "Mark!" I was about to retort when I felt a light touch on my shoulder. I jerked away, expecting the figure again, but there was no one there. Panic set in, and I scrambled backward into the veil of darkness, knowing that whatever was hunting me had to be right behind. The hunt was just beginning. I stumbled into the unexpected. The cold darkness swallowed me as I backed away, my breath catching in my throat. I could still hear that distant voice calling, echoing through the void. It sounded like Evelyn, but it felt as if it were coming from every direction, taunting me. My hands brushed against something solid, a wall. I pressed against it, trying to gather my thoughts. I was completely unmoored in this strange place, and just as I was about to feel for a way out, I felt it again, something brushing against my shoulder. I yelped and spun around, but the darkness was thick, closing in on me. "Mark!" The voice was sharper now, and I thought I heard a hint of urgency, even desperation. Without thinking, I lunged toward where I believed the doorway must be. The coldness of the air shocked my lungs, but I couldn't stop to breathe. As I reached desperately for the exit, my fingers grazed something damp and uneven. The walls felt grimy, almost pulsing, like they knew something I didn't. Just as I stumbled forward, I caught a glimpse of flickering light from the corner of my eye. The screen! I could see it from where I stood. I dashed towards it, feeling the weight of the shadows behind me. As soon as I reached the screen, the images intensified, swirling on the cracked surface like frenzied ghosts. "Mark, don't look away." Evelyn's voice rang clear and commanding, cutting through my haze of fear. I focused on the screen, trying to tie together the fragmented pictures. Faces flashed, some familiar and others foreign, always slipping away before I could make sense of them. Then something struck me. A child's face, eyes wide with fear. I blinked. I knew that face. It was mine. "What am I seeing?" I gasped, steps faltering. My mind was racing, piecing together the fragments. It felt familiar, hauntingly so. "Why are you showing me this?" The images shifted, unveiling a scene that clawed at my gut. I saw a group of people standing together. They looked relieved, but far too pallid, as if they had just stepped out of a nightmare. Then I felt it, a pulse, an echo of fear that surged to life in my chest. Before I could catch my breath, the temperature in the room dropped further. I could see my breath form little clouds in the air. "No," I whispered, the weight of realization crashing down on me. "Not again." The shadows thickened, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. My mind raced. This place had a history, a terrible one that may have twisted time and memories, and just then something lunged from the shadows. I didn't wait to see what it was. I threw myself back, hand reaching for the light switch. My fingers flickered over it, but before I could flip the switch, a new sensation clawed at my throat, suffocating me. Panic rose as the darkness whispered maliciously, attempting to pull me back. I fought against it, slamming my hand on the switch in desperation. The lights flickered on, flooding the room with harsh, blinding light. The shadows dispersed momentarily, revealing what lay before me. That's when I saw it, a door at the far end of the room, slightly ajar, light spilling from within. It whispered promises of escape, but there was something off about it. I could feel a chill emanating from the space beyond. I took a step forward, heart racing. I didn't want to be there any longer. I felt the pressure building around me again, the whispers returning. I had to know what was behind that door. But as I approached, I realized the figure stood right outside it. The silhouette was familiar, but my gut twisted with uncertainty. I needed to make a choice. Would I face whatever waited for me beyond that door? "Mark," the figure said again, and this time I felt something shift. Understanding, fear. I didn't know, but then I heard it. A low rumble beneath me, the building itself trembling. I had little time. The hunt was far from over. The tremor grew stronger, rattling the very foundations of the room. I hesitated, my breath caught in my throat as I stared at the figure by the door. Shadows clung to it like mist, making it hard to see clearly. "Evelyn?" I called out, but my voice felt small against the encroaching chaos. "Mark!" The urgency in her voice cut through. It pushed me forward. I took a tentative step, and the floor creaked beneath me. The flickering lights offered eerie illumination, making the shapes in the corners contort into grotesque illusions. I swallowed hard, pushing that fear down. Now was not the time to back away. "Mark, please!" Her voice was more than a plea. It carried a weight of warning I couldn't ignore. I moved closer to her, instinctively drawn in, past the threshold of the door, but as I stepped inside, my resolve faltered. I was hit by a wave of icy air that sunk deep into my bones. "What's happening?" I whispered into the chilling space. It opened up into a broader room, one I didn't recognize. The walls were lined with photographs, all in black and white. Faces stared back at me, some smiling and others frowning, but all appeared disconnected, as if they belonged to a past I couldn't reach. I reached out, running my fingertips along the framed edges. One photo caught my eye. A small group of people standing outside a research station, and at the back, a shadow. Something was wrong. I squinted closer, and just as I was about to pull it off the wall, the floor quaked again, a violent jolt that sent me stumbling backward. "Mark, you need to leave!" Evelyn's voice echoed, now louder, almost frantic. I spun around toward her, and in that glance, everything shifted. The door I had entered through was now gone. It had sealed shut, leaving me trapped in this strange room. An overwhelming sense of dread bubbled up inside me. The photographs weren't just memories, they were warnings. Before I could process what was happening, a soft hum filled the air, vibrating through my bones. I turned to face the wall of photos again. Suddenly a picture slid out of its frame, dropping to the ground with a dull thud. I leaned down to pick it up and felt an icy shiver race up my spine as I recognized the familiar face. It was me, taken before I even had memories of being there. "What is this?" I breathed, confusion mixing with terror. Just then the light flickered wildly, my surroundings blending into a chaotic swirl before stabilizing again. A voice rang out, layered like echoes in a cave. "You can't escape your past, Mark." The air crackled with energy, and my skin prickled. The next instant, shadows flared to life, darting toward me from every angle. I ran, panic fueling my feet as I searched for any way out. I couldn't think. I could only follow my instincts. Then I spotted it. A window slightly ajar, a glimmer of light beckoning through the frost-covered glass. As I approached, the shadows lunged for me again. My heart raced, and fear sparked a surge of adrenaline. I had to get to that window. I heard Evelyn's voice, distant but clear. "Get out, Mark!" Just as I reached for it, the glass shattered, fragments twinkling like stars before falling to the floor like jagged breaths. Then I heard it, a low growl of something lurking in the darkness. I turned to face it, the realization sinking in. I wasn't alone, and just like that, the hunt had turned on me. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. The shadows were closer now, shifting and writhing like live creatures. I turned back to the window, but the jagged edges of the broken glass offered no safety. I could feel a presence lingering at my back, waiting. "Mark!" Evelyn's voice called again, but it seemed muffled, distant. I took a trembling step away from the window. The growl morphed into a low whisper, curling around my mind. "You can't escape." I stumbled to the nearest wall, desperate for something solid to lean against. My eyes darted back to the photographs, searching for answers but finding only more questions. The chilling air pressed against my skin, suffocating and heavy. I couldn't stay here. I needed a plan. As I surveyed the room, I spotted a door on the opposite side. It looked like it might lead out, but the shadows were closing in. They danced along the walls, eyes glinting in the darkness, filled with malice. I didn't have much time. Gathering my resolve, I took a deep breath and dashed toward the door. I could hear the growl grow louder, a low rumble building in intensity. I reached for the handle, praying it would turn. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. Light flooded in, and I stepped through, shutting it behind me with a shaky hand. The growl faded, replaced by silence. I leaned against the door, breathing heavily, trying to calm the storm within me. The hallway stretched in both directions. The light overhead flickered, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Unfamiliar, yet familiar, like a dream I couldn't quite remember. I glanced down the corridor, anxiety gnawing at me. I had no idea where to go next. That's when I heard a whisper, soft and echoing. "Mark!" I turned sharply, heart lurching. "Evelyn?" Nothing answered except my own breath. I hesitated, caught between the urge to follow the voice and the instinct to run. But I couldn't abandon her, not when she needed me. I moved cautiously, inching toward the sound, each step cautious as the hallway twisted around. Flickers of movement caught my eye, and my heart raced. I pressed on, the whispers growing clearer. "Help me, Mark." Around the next corner I was met with a stark, open space. A large room stretched before me, filled with disarray, papers scattered, shelves toppled. In the center, under a dim bulb that swung erratically, was a small table holding an array of objects I didn't recognize. My breath quickened as I approached. They were scientific instruments, broken and rusted, but they seemed out of place among the chaos. Then I saw a folder, a label barely legible. Project Aurora. I reached for it, mind set the contents might hold a clue. As I flipped it open, a piece of paper slipped out, fluttering to the ground. What I read made my stomach drop. Initiating observation protocol. Subject Mark Turner. I froze. The realization crashed over me like tidal waves. They had been watching me. Someone had been following my life, my movements. Then a loud thud echoed in the hallway behind me. My heart sank. There was no time left. The hunt was far from over. With the folder clutched in my hand, I sprinted toward the far exit, the darkness hot on my heels. I burst through the next door, slamming it behind me. The echoes of my frantic footsteps reverberated off the cold, concrete walls. I scanned the new room. This one was different. It was smaller, cluttered with metal crates and wrapped in an oppressive silence. My heart was still racing, the folder pressing uncomfortably against my chest. I glanced around, searching for an escape route. No windows here, no light. Just shadows crawling across every surface. I stepped deeper inside, urgency driving me. Suddenly I caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned sharply. "Show yourself!" I shouted, my voice reverberating in the empty space. Nothing but silence answered. Sweat dripped down my back. I could feel the shadows gathering again, creeping closer. It was like they were aware of my fear, feeding off it. The whispers returned, now urgent, pleading, "Mark, please." "Evelyn!" I called again, desperate. My voice seemed to hang in the air, unanswered. I moved toward the flicker, my instinct screaming at me to turn back, but I pressed on. I reached one of the metal crates, and my hands shook as I pried it open. Rusty hinges creaked, and inside lay an array of devices that looked nothing like the scientific instruments I had seen before. These were like something out of a thriller, tangled wires, blinking lights. That's when I spotted a small monitor, barely functional. I flicked the switch, and light flickered to life. Static buzzed loudly, making me jump. The screen flickered and settled, revealing a short video feed. It was distorted, but I could make out a figure, a woman. My stomach twisted. It was Evelyn. She looked terrified, her eyes wild, and then the image cut out, static, filling the screen again. I tightened my grip on the monitor. "Evelyn, where are you?" I yelled, my voice cracking. I had no answers, just an excruciating sense of loss as I fumbled with the monitor, trying to stabilize the signal. Then I heard it again. The growl, deeper this time, no longer hiding in the shadows. It was close. My body tensed as the temperature in the air seemed to drop. I turned toward the door I had just come through, but the shadows were spilling in through the edges. I had no choice. I grabbed the folder and the monitor, shoving them under my arm. I sprinted for the only other exit I could see, a heavy door at the far end of the room. I threw it open, praying for salvation. But instead, I was met with darkness, an abyss beyond the door, as if it swallowed the light whole. Just as I hesitated, a figure emerged from the shadows behind me, silhouetted against the light. My breath froze in my throat. I caught a glimpse of yellow eyes shining with hunger. "Mark!" it whispered, and I realized whatever was hunting me had found its prey. I threw myself into the void, uncertainty pushing me forward. The plunge into darkness felt surreal. I couldn't tell if I was falling or just standing in place. The air was thick around me, heavier than the snow outside, and it pressed against my skin like a shroud. I clutched the folder and monitor tightly, praying for some handle on reality to ground me. Then suddenly I hit something solid. I stumbled, disoriented, and found myself sprawled on the floor of what seemed to be another chamber. A dim light flickered above me, illuminating the space. I blinked, struggling to regain my equilibrium, the shadows still dancing just beyond my reach. I quickly regained my feet, adrenaline surging in my veins. The whispers were gone now, replaced by an eerie silence that rang in my ears. My heart raced as I turned to face the exit behind me, but the door I had so desperately shut was gone, seemingly merged with the wall that surrounded me. I was trapped again. With no time to waste, I examined my surroundings. The floor was scattered with more old photographs and sketches, all depicting scenes of the research facility, teams working, smiling, a mix of joyful and grim faces. One photo caught my eye. Evelyn standing with a group, her gaze direct, as if she were looking right through the camera at me. It felt like a clue, but what was it telling me? The monitor flickered against my side as if yearning to be switched back on. I hastily placed it on the ground, hoping that whatever clue it held could help me understand what had just happened and maybe even where Evelyn was. But before I could attend to it, the unmistakable growl emanated from somewhere deep in the shadows, the sound, chilling and haunting, echoing off the walls. I fumbled with the power switch. The screen hissed and crackled to life, displaying static before settling into a clearer view. Evelyn appeared again, but this time she was crying, her face filled with palpable fear. "Mark!" she gasped, her voice distorted but clear. "You have to listen, find me. They keep us here." "Where?" I nearly shouted, the urgency pushing me to the brink. The image flickered wildly as static blurred her features, but not before she managed to convey one last important detail. "The ice. You are close." As if the world turned to black again, the monitor died, plunging me into uneasy silence. I glanced once more at the walls adorned with photos. An icy realization settled in. This place was their prison. This facility had swallowed lives and memories whole. Shivers danced down my spine as I understood. If I wanted to escape, I had to delve deeper, resisting the paralyzing fear clawing at me. I turned away from the windowless chamber and toward an adjacent room, light spilling enticingly from the crack of an opening door. Gathering a final breath, I pushed it wide, revealing what appeared to be the heart of the station. Inside, the room was starkly different. A strange machine hummed, glistening with wires and metal. It pulsed with an almost human-like rhythm, and I realized I was looking at some advanced tech potentially designed for observation or experimentation, perhaps a means to harness whatever essence tethered the lost souls to this place. I stepped closer, trying to understand its purpose, when the shadows encroached again, coiling around me like nothing I had ever felt. They suffocated the light, and a low whisper flickered in the air, a sinister echo that felt close enough to touch. "Mark, come back to us." I shook my head, determined not to give in again. "No," I bellowed, injecting my voice with all the defiance I could muster. "I won't. I'm not your pawn." The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if my words had impacted them, but the growl emanated again, this time heavier, angrier. My vision blurred, and I turned desperately toward the strange machine as an idea struck me. Perhaps it contained answers wrapped within its metal skin. I approached it faster than my heart could keep pace, squinting to decipher the symbols scrawled across its surface, the familiar scratching, the same as those eerie etchings throughout the station. They were not random. They were instructions, a way to communicate. Rumblings of dread surged inside as I studied them, whispering suggestions to connect with whatever lay dormant within. With desperation pushing me forward, I fumbled to connect unwound wires from the machine to my phone, using it as a makeshift tool to spark whatever could link me to Evelyn. As soon as the light from my phone met the machine's surface, it pulsed brightly like a heartbeat. The growling morphed into a howl, fraying the air around me. I fought against an invisible force that sought to pull me away. I needed to focus, needed to trust in this fleeting connection. Fingers trembling, I activated the connection. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of anguish clashing, yet simultaneously the humming machine began to reveal glimpses of those trapped in its labyrinth. Faces emerged, flickering memories colliding like a stream of consciousness. One formed clearly. It was Evelyn, eyes locked onto mine. "Help me!" she cried, and for a moment the machine sparked, light flooding the space. Shadows screamed, the light began consuming them, pushing them back into the dark. I strained my focus on her, heart pounding. "Where are you?" She reached out through time and space, and I saw the room with ice and abandoned research notes. I felt it beneath my skin. I was nearly there. The ice. Find the core. She faded, but her words were etched onto the fabric of my reality. With renewed determination, I pulled away from the machine, keeping hold of the energy surging within me. "Come with me," I shouted, willing the light to press forth as I ran towards what could only be the heart of the station, the freezer, the abyss where all this had begun. I burst through a final door, this one leading into a vast sub-zero chamber, the cold biting at my skin like daggers. Metal shelves lined with containers stretched before me, and I only had a vague sense of hope. The shadows swarmed, desperate to cling on, but I pushed forward into the heart of the cold, the essence of the research itself. Desperation clouded my vision as I rifled through the containers. I felt it, the pulse, the energy woven beneath the layers of ice. I had to find what held them captive before time slipped away. "Evelyn!" I called again, searching frantically. Then something cold brushed against my hand. My fingers reverberated as I touched a solid object inside one of the containers. My heart leapt as I pried it open. A small glowing orb glistened within, radiating warmth amidst the biting cold. It felt alive, connected. In that moment I realized a heartbeat beneath the ice. It pulsed with life, yet mirrored the voices woven with anguish, a connection to all that had perished here, including Evelyn. With all my strength, I grasped the orb, inhaling icy air, willing the connections from the machine to reignite. The shadows flared as they converged on me, anger at the new energy seeping through. "Get away!" I shouted hoarsely, clenching my teeth. Light exploded from the orb, breaking apart the shadows surrounding me, illuminating dusty corners that had long lain hidden. I screamed as warmth rushed in, the shadows merging into a haunting scream, fighting desperately against the searing light. "Mark! Release us!" Evelyn's voice surged forth alongside the echoes of many others, rising against the chaos. I gritted my teeth and pushed further, the vibrations from the orb amplifying my resolve. "Let them go!" The pressure mounted, light swirling around, consuming, illuminating. With a final roar, shadows dissipated, the echoes of those once trapped fading into the surrounding space. My vision blurred, brilliant light washing over me. Just like that, I was standing alone once more, the chamber now silent, void of both the shadows and souls who had cried out for freedom. A layer of ice cracked and collapsed at my feet, leaving a raw emptiness echoing with promise and fear. Breathless, I glanced toward where the machine used to stand. In its place lay remnants of shadows, faint wisps dissipating into the air. Evelyn's voice flickered against my ears one last time, a quiet whisper of gratitude. "There's more out there, Mark. Always more," she echoed softly, fading. As reality settled around me, questions lingered. Were they truly free? Was the cycle broken, or just postponed until next winter? But as the cold seeped away, I turned and exited the chamber, knowing the truth of what remained in Antarctica was bigger than I could ever comprehend. I took a deep breath, and I walked away, the horizon stretching before me, uncertain but illuminated.